I never thought I'd be sitting here telling this story, but sometimes life has a way of forcing you to see what was right in front of you all along. My name is Michael, a 39-year-old construction project manager from Denver, Colorado. I've always been the reliable one, the guy who shows up early, stays late, and makes sure everyone else is taken care of before himself. That's just how my parents raised me in our modest suburban home, where hard work and responsibility were valued above all else. 10 years ago, I met Amber at a friend's barbecue in Washington Park. She was vibrant and full of life, with ambitious dreams of starting her own interior design business. Her smile lit up the summer evening, and within months, we were inseparable. I still remember helping her move into my 2-bedroom apartment near Cherry Creek, both of us laughing as we navigated her oversized couch through narrow doorways. "This is the beginning of something amazing," she had said, and I believed her, with every fiber of my being. Our relationship seemed perfect on the surface. We hosted dinner parties where Amber would showcase her design talents, transforming our simple apartment into something that could have been featured in a magazine. I would grill steaks on the balcony while she charmed our friends with stories of difficult clients and creative solutions. Everyone thought we were the ideal couple, the steady, dependable guy and the creative, spirited woman. What our friends didn't see was how quickly I became the only one contributing financially. When Amber's design business struggled to take off, I encouraged her to keep pursuing her dream. "Don't worry about the money," I told her. "I've got us covered." And I did. Mortgage, utilities, groceries, her car payment, health insurance, even the expensive design software she needed. I picked up overtime and side jobs to make it all work, often coming home exhausted to find Amber sketching new design concepts at the kitchen table. I never complained. After all, relationships are about supporting each other, right? And I truly believed that once her business succeeded, things would balance out. Little did I know that my dedication was building the foundation for a betrayal I never saw coming. The first signs that something was off appeared gradually, like hairline cracks in a foundation. 5 years into our relationship, Amber's design business finally gained traction. She landed a few high-profile clients in Denver's booming real estate market, and suddenly her schedule was packed with consultations and installations. I was genuinely happy for her. This was what we'd been working toward all those years. But instead of our relationship strengthening with her success, a subtle distance began to grow between us. Amber started attending networking events and industry parties without inviting me. "They're just boring business functions," she'd say dismissively. "You wouldn't enjoy them." When I'd suggest joining her just to offer support, she'd brush me off with excuses about maintaining professional boundaries. Our joint bank account, which I had diligently filled for years, began showing withdrawals for expensive lunches at upscale restaurants like Guard and Grace, or cocktails at Death & Co., places we had once considered special occasion spots. When I mentioned these expenses, Amber would sigh impatiently. "They're business meetings, Michael. That's how you build a clientele in design." One evening, I was paying bills at our kitchen table when I noticed something strange on our cell phone statement. There was a number that appeared dozens of times. Early morning calls, late night texts. When I casually asked Amber about it, she snatched the bill from my hands. "Are you monitoring my calls now?" she snapped, color rising to her cheeks. "That's my new contractor. We have a lot of details to coordinate." The conversation ended there, but the knot in my stomach didn't go away. I started noticing other changes too. Designer clothes appearing in her closet with tags from Nordstrom and Neiman Marcus, a new expensive perfume that she never wore around me, and increasingly frequent girls' nights that kept her out until the early morning hours. Still, I kept paying the bills. I renovated our spare bedroom into a proper home office for her business, spending thousands on custom shelving and the perfect lighting she wanted. I even took out a small loan to help her lease a commercial space in the trendy Rhino district when she said she needed to elevate her brand. Through it all, I believed we were building our future together, even as I ignored the growing evidence that Amber was building something else entirely. The breaking point came during what should have been a celebration. Amber's design firm had been featured in Colorado Homes and Lifestyles magazine, and she was hosting a launch party at her new studio space. After a particularly long day at the construction site, I rushed home to shower and change, excited to finally be included in this part of her life. When I arrived at the sleek industrial space in Reno, it was already buzzing with Denver's design, elite. I spotted Amber across the room, stunning in a black dress I'd never seen before, champagne flute in hand, surrounded by a circle of admirers. Her laugh carried across the room, that same laugh that had once been reserved for our private moments. I made my way through the crowd, nodding politely at strangers who glanced at me with mild curiosity. When I finally reached Amber's side, I leaned in to kiss her cheek. She stiffened and stepped back. "Michael," she said, her voice carrying a sharp edge that several people nearby could clearly hear. "I wasn't expecting you so early." A tall, well-dressed man beside her raised an eyebrow. "And this is—" Before I could introduce myself, Amber waved her hand dismissively. "This is Michael. We share an apartment." Share an apartment. Not my partner of 10 years. Not the man who supported me through everything. Just a roommate. The conversation continued around me as if I were invisible. I stood there, the weight of her words crushing me, as Amber and the man, whom she introduced as Jason, a prominent real estate developer, discussed an upcoming project with easy familiarity. Their shoulders touched as they leaned toward each other, sharing private smiles over inside jokes I wasn't part of. Later that evening, when most guests had departed, I confronted her near the bar. "Roommate, is that all I am to you after 10 years?" Amber glanced around nervously before hissing, "Don't make a scene, Michael. These people are important for my business." "And what am I doing with your business?" I asked, the hurt evident in my voice. "Just the guy who funded it?" Her eyes flashed with something between guilt and irritation. "Look, you chose to support me. I never forced you to pay for anything. But this is my moment, and you're making it about you." I left the party alone, driving home through Denver's glittering downtown, the city lights blurring through tears I refused to acknowledge. The following week was a fog of pain and disbelief. I threw myself into work, taking on extra hours at the construction site to avoid going home. Amber barely noticed my absence, busy with her newfound success and increasingly frequent client meetings that stretched late into the evening. One Wednesday afternoon, I had to return home unexpectedly, after a job site accident left me with a minor hand injury. The apartment was supposed to be empty. Amber had mentioned a full day of consultations. Instead, I heard her voice drifting from her home office, the door slightly ajar. "It's complicated, Jason," she was saying, her tone intimate in a way that made my stomach clench. "I can't just leave overnight. There's the apartment, the finances." A pause as she listened to the response on the other end of the call. I know, but he's paid for everything for years. The apartment lease is in his name, but I've been treating it like my own personal ATM. If I just walk away, I lose access to that security." Another pause. "Of course I have feelings for you, but I need to be smart about this. Michael is convenient right now. Give me a few more months to get things in order, and I promise we'll be together without complications." I stood frozen in the hallway, the throbbing in my injured hand nothing compared to the pain in my chest. 10 years of love and sacrifice reduced to convenient. 10 years of supporting her dreams were dismissed as something to be strategically abandoned. At that moment, something shifted inside me. The hurt began to crystallize into resolve. I quietly retreated from the apartment and spent the rest of the day in a coffee shop on Colfax Avenue, my mind racing with revelations and possibilities. That evening, instead of confronting Amber, I made a decision. I would not lash out or create drama. Instead, I would approach this like one of my construction projects, with careful planning, precise timing, and a clear end goal. I opened my laptop and began methodically documenting everything. Every bill I'd paid, every loan I'd taken for her business, every asset we shared. Then I made 3 phone calls, to my bank, to a lawyer friend, and to my brother in Colorado Springs. If Amber wanted to treat me like nothing more than a financial convenience, then it was time to show her exactly what that really meant. If you're rooting for Michael to get the justice he deserves after years of dedication, hit that subscribe button. His comeback is just beginning. The next morning, I woke up before Amber and left the apartment early, but not to go to work. Instead, I headed to First Bank on 17th Street, where I met with a financial advisor I'd scheduled the previous day. For years, Amber and I had shared accounts. My idea, as I thought it demonstrated trust and commitment. Now, that same trust was being weaponized against me. I'd like to open new accounts in my name only, I explained to the advisor, a sympathetic woman named Melissa, and I need to understand how to legally protect my assets going forward. By noon, I had opened a separate checking and savings account, redirected my direct deposit from work, and started the process of documenting which assets were purchased, solely with my income, which, as it turned out, was nearly everything we owned. My next stop was to Phil Harding, an attorney friend who specialized in property law. Over lunch at a quiet corner table in the Larimer Square Diner, I laid out my situation. "You're not married," which actually simplifies things, Phil said, reviewing my documents. "Colorado doesn't recognize common law marriage unless specific. Conditions are met, which doesn't sound like your case, but we need to be careful about the lease, shared purchases, and especially any business investments." Phil helped me draft a letter documenting all financial contributions I'd made to Amber's business, the office renovation, the equipment purchases, the loan for her commercial space, totaling over $87,000 over the years. "This isn't about revenge," I told Phil when he raised an eyebrow at the growing list. "This is about protecting what I've worked for." That evening, I met my brother Kyle for drinks at Great Divide Brewing Company. Unlike my careful planning with the bank and lawyer, this conversation was about emotional support. Kyle had always been skeptical of Amber, especially as he watched me work multiple jobs to support her ambitions. "I've been waiting for this day for years," Kyle admitted, clinking his craft beer against mine. "But I'm sorry it had to happen this way." For the first time since the party, I felt a weight lifting. I wasn't alone in this. I had resources, support, and most importantly, a plan. When I returned to the apartment that night, Amber was working late again. I went to sleep in our shared bed for what I knew would be one of the last times, a new sense of calm replacing the hurt that had consumed me just days before. The power was shifting, and Amber didn't even know it yet. Over the next 2 weeks, I underwent a transformation that went far beyond financial disentanglement. For the first time in a decade, I began thinking about what I wanted for my future. Not our future, not Amber's future, but mine. I reconnected with friends I'd lost touch with while supporting Amber's social and business obligations. An old college buddy, Dave, now ran a successful commercial construction company in Boulder and had been trying to recruit me for years. "The offer still stands," he said when we met for hiking at Chautauqua Park one Saturday morning. "Senior, project manager, better benefits, and honestly, man, a team that values your expertise." As we reached the summit overlooking the Flatirons, I realized how small I'd allowed my world to become. I'd been so focused on building Amber's dreams that I'd neglected my own. The Colorado sunshine felt different that day. Warmer, full of possibility. At home, I implemented subtle changes. I converted the guest room into my own space, moving most of my belongings there without explanation. When Amber questioned it, I simply said I'd been having trouble sleeping and didn't want to disturb her late returns from client meetings. She seemed almost relieved, which only confirmed what I already knew. I started going to the gym again, joined a weekend basketball league, and enrolled in an evening course on sustainable construction techniques at the University of Denver. Something I'd wanted to do for years but had put off because Amber complained about being alone in the evenings. The physical changes followed the mental ones. The constant stress lines around my eyes began to fade. Colleagues at work commented on my renewed energy and focus. My brother Kyle noted that I was standing straighter, my voice more confident when we spoke. All the while, Amber remained oblivious to these transformations. In her mind, I was still predictable Michael, the financial safety net, the convenient roommate. She continued her late nights and vague explanations, now barely bothering to craft convincing lies about her whereabouts. I could have confronted her, exposed what I knew about her relationship with Jason, but I recognized that would only give her power. The power to make me seem jealous, unreasonable, bitter. Instead, I channeled my energy into becoming someone stronger than the man she thought she knew. Someone who would be ready when the right moment came to reveal exactly what just a roommate was entitled to. The moment of truth arrived unexpectedly on a Friday evening in late spring. I'd accepted Dave's job offer and given notice at my current position, though I hadn't yet shared this news with Amber. I was planning my exit strategically, waiting until all financial entanglements were resolved. I came home early to find Amber, in our living room with Jason, surrounded by interior design samples and blueprints spread across the coffee table, the same coffee table I'd built by hand for her birthday 3 years ago. "Michael," Amber startled, quickly gathering some of the papers. "We were just finishing up." "Don't mind me," I replied calmly, noting how comfortable Jason looked in my space, his expensive loafers propped near my handcrafted table. "I'm just grabbing something before heading out again." Jason extended his hand with practiced charm. "Good to see you again, Michael. Amber's told me so much about your arrangement." The word choice wasn't accidental. I shook his hand firmly, maintaining eye contact a beat longer than comfortable. "Has she?" I smiled. "I wonder if she mentioned that her design business exists because of my financial investments." The room temperature seemed to drop several degrees. "Michael, this isn't appropriate," Amber hissed, her face flushing. "Actually," I continued, retrieving a folder from my messenger bag, "I think it's exactly the right time to discuss business arrangements. Jason, as Amber's new client, you might be interested in this." I placed Phil's carefully prepared documents on the table, a complete accounting of every dollar I'd invested in Amber's business, the loan agreements she'd signed for the commercial space lease, receipts for equipment purchased under my name, and the legal notice of my intent to claim appropriate compensation. "What is this?" Amber's voice rose in panic as she skimmed the documents. "This," I said evenly, "is what happens when you reduce a decade-long relationship to a roommate arrangement. Roommates keep careful track of financial contributions. Roommates expect to be paid back for investments. Roommates don't subsidize each other's business ventures without proper documentation." Jason picked up one of the papers, his developer's instinct immediately recognizing the legal implications. "Amber, you told me you owned your business outright." "I do," she insisted, but her voice wavered. "Actually," I corrected her, pointing to specific lines in the agreement she'd signed years ago. "We're business partners, and I'm calling in my investment." The aftermath of that confrontation unfolded like a carefully orchestrated construction project, each element falling precisely into place. Amber cycled through predictable stages. First denial, then anger, followed by desperate attempts to negotiate, and finally, resignation. "You can't do this to me," she had pleaded that night after Jason left abruptly, citing an early meeting. "Everything I've built will fall apart." "No," I corrected her calmly. "Everything we've built. And I'm not destroying it, I'm simply claiming my fair share." My lawyer had given Amber 3 options. Buy me out for a fair market value of my investment, approximately $87,000, sell the business and split proceeds according to our documented contributions, or restructure with me as a silent partner entitled to 40% of profits until my investment was recouped. For someone who had portrayed me as just a roommate, the reality of our financial entanglement came as a staggering blow. Amber's business was successful but not liquid enough for an immediate buyout. Selling would destroy the brand she'd built, and having me as a partner was, as she put it, completely unacceptable. Jason, it turned out, wasn't interested in a woman with significant financial baggage. Their relationship cooled dramatically once he understood the legal claims against her business. As a developer, He recognized a risky investment when he saw 1. Through it all, I maintained a composed, businesslike approach. This wasn't about extracting revenge. It was about claiming what was rightfully mine after years of one-sided sacrifice. We eventually settled on a structured payment plan. Amber would retain full ownership of her business but would make monthly payments to me over 5 years, secured by a lien against her commercial property and business assets. The agreement included interest and penalties for late payments, just as any financial institution would require. As for our apartment, I gave her 30 days to find a new place. That's generous, my lawyer had noted. The lease is in your name, only. But I wasn't interested in causing unnecessary hardship, only in establishing clear boundaries. The day Amber moved out was anticlimactic. She hired movers who efficiently packed her personal belongings while I worked from my home office, now permanently established in the former guest room. When they finished, she stood awkwardly in the doorway. "I never meant for things to end this way," she said softly. "I know," I replied, "but we both get to start over now." 3 years have passed since that pivotal confrontation in my living room. In that time, Denver's skyline has changed, and so has my life. The structured payment plan Amber and I agreed to has been faithfully maintained. Less out of goodwill, I suspect, than fear of the consequences Phil built into our agreement. Each month, a deposit appears in my account, steadily repaying the decade of financial support I provided. I accepted Dave's job offer in Boulder, and the career move proved transformative. My expertise in sustainable construction practices, enhanced by the courses I completed at the University of Denver, positioned me perfectly for Colorado's booming eco-conscious building market. Last year, I was promoted to Vice President of Operations, overseeing projects across the Front Range. The apartment Amber and I shared has long since been replaced by a modest but comfortable house in Louisville, with mountain views and enough yard space for the rescue dog I adopted, a patient boxer mix named Duke, who seems to understand the value of second chances. I've renovated much of the house myself, each improvement reflecting my own tastes and priorities rather than someone else's vision. My social circle has expanded in ways I couldn't have imagined during those years when Amber's needs dominated my calendar. I coach youth basketball at the community center on weekends. Regular climbing trips with coworkers have become a highlight of each month, and I've even started dating again, cautiously, with a clearer understanding of what partnership truly means. Katie, the environmental engineer I've been seeing for about 6 months, insists on splitting checks and planning dates equally. The first time she Venmo'd me for her share of concert tickets, I felt an unexpected wave of emotion, not because of the money, but because of the respect that simple act represented. I've seen Amber occasionally at industry events. Denver's construction and design worlds inevitably overlap. Her business survived and continues to do well, though I've heard through mutual connections that she had to scale back and move to a smaller commercial space. We exchange professional nods when our paths cross, nothing more. Sometimes, people ask if I regret spending 10 years with someone who ultimately devalued my contribution so dramatically. I don't see it that way. Those years taught me invaluable lessons about self-worth, boundaries, and the difference between supporting someone's dreams and sacrificing your own in the process. In a strange way, I'm grateful for that moment when Amber called me just a roommate. Without that painful clarity, I might have continued pouring myself into a relationship that was fundamentally unbalanced. Sometimes the most hurtful words are exactly what we need to hear to find our way forward. Looking back at the journey that brought me here, I'm struck by how easily we can mistake endurance for strength. For 10 years, I thought being supportive meant carrying all the weight, financial, emotional, practical, without complaint. I believed love meant sacrifice without reciprocation. I was wrong. True strength wasn't in silently paying bills, while watching my relationship erode. It wasn't in working overtime to fund someone else's dream while mine gathered dust. True strength emerged when I finally recognized my own value and acted accordingly. The monthly payments from Amber will eventually end. the legal agreement fulfilled. But the lessons will remain. That generosity should have limits, that partnership requires balance, and that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to enforce boundaries. Last week, I received an unexpected email from Jason, of all people. He's developing a new eco-friendly apartment complex in Reno and wanted to discuss hiring our firm for the construction. "I've heard great things about your sustainable building approach," he wrote. We met for coffee, the awkwardness of our history acknowledged briefly before moving on to business. As we parted, he said something that stayed with me. "You know, you did us both a favor that day. Neither of us was seeing the situation clearly." Perhaps that's the most surprising outcome of this whole experience. The realization that standing up for myself benefited everyone involved. Amber now runs her business on honest footing. Jason avoided a relationship built on deception. And I discovered a version of myself I never knew existed. Someone who values his own dreams as much as anyone else's. So, if you're watching this and recognize something of your own situation in mine, if you're the one always giving, always paying, always sacrificing, ask yourself what would happen if you stopped, not out of spite or revenge, but out of respect for your own worth. The answer might surprise you as it did me. Thank you for watching my story to the end. It truly means the world to know that sharing these difficult experiences might help others recognize similar patterns in their own lives. If my journey from doormat to self-respect resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment letting me know if you've ever experienced something similar, or if there's another type of story you'd like to see, whether it's more relationship betrayals, workplace justice, or family conflicts. And if you know someone who might need to hear this message, share this video. Sometimes the stories we hear give us permission to write new endings on our own.